This is a demonstration on the GISPro app. We'll begin by opening the app on our iPad. You can see there's already a couple different projects in here. We'll open up a new one. You've got a few options here at the bottom. This file with the plus will start a new project for us. It usually starts you off in kind of a generalized area. To zoom in on where you're at, up at the top, you can see there's kind of a bulleted icon. This basically uses your GPS location to show where you are. So you can see we're at the office, and I'm zooming in here using my fingers in order to zoom in and out and move the screen around easily. What we'll do first is you can name the project. You just click up in that area and the keyboard will appear. And I can name this whatever I want. Call it, test farm. And then just click the keyboard icon and that will disappear again. And let's go through each of the layers and feature classes, etc. here to show you the usability. A couple other things that you'll see over here in the larger screen are a few different functions, such as you can change here if you want to see this via lat long, UTM, etc., accuracy, speed, elevation, direction. You've got a few different choices on what presents there while you're moving around and utilizing the app. If you turn this off, that turns off your location and the GPS off. As well as you can enter in coordinates here to go to those directly. Along the bottom, we've got a couple functions that we'll get to as we go through. The Google Hybrid is the map I'm using now. If I click that, I can change the background map to, let's say I do Bing image, for instance. It will just change it to there depending on what maps are loaded. This is a measurement tool, this little bar at the bottom that we'll get to. And fit is, you click on that when you've got already multiple things in here that you can see all in one screen. And I'll come back to that utility here in a bit. So layers are going to show you all the layers that you have in here, and layers are basically points. Currently we have none. If we were going to add that, you see this plus icon right here. If I click on that, it's going to give me a couple different sets or feature classes to choose from of how I input in those different layers. To backtrack just one step and talk about the feature classes, when we go to our kind of menu bar here, you'll see feature classes, and when I click on that, you see a bunch of them here, and I've got two that I've made, and you can make your own feature class at any time. And if I open up the dairy inventory one, for instance, it shows me all of the different points I can place on a map, the different lines I can place on a map, and the different polygons that I can place on a map. For instance, if I want to place a point of interest, I go back over here to the plus, I click on dairy inventory. It shows me all of those choices that are within that feature class, and I can click point of interest. Now there's two ways now it's giving me the ability to do this. I can tap and place it in the crosshairs, so I can move my screen wherever I want. If I want to place it right there, I press place. If I want it to place me at my GPS location in the lower corner, I click that bullseye again. It centers it on the GPS location I'm at, and I click place. Now that icon is there. What has popped up here on the left hand side is all of the different descriptors, photos, etc. that I have said that I want associated with this point, and I'll show you how to do that in a minute. But while we're here, I can click on time assessment, and it shows me today, the time and date. I can click in description and add in a description of what this point is. I can also add photos, so if I click on take new photo, it's going to use the photo option of this iPad, and you can see I can take a photo based on what I see right now, and I click use, and now I've got that photo logged in with this point as well. So if for some reason I wanted to add in an attribute, that would be another thing in here. I can do that, and I'll show you that in a minute. So if I want to add another point, if I want to do an attention area again, I can do that via GPS, or I can place it at will, and again it's going to post up all the things that I want to add in here. Here I've got a way that I can add a description of what the issue is, and I can save that. Guidance for correction, I can add that in as well, and again the photos, etc. So it's a way that I can, based on the point I want to put down, record all those things that go along with it. So let's backtrack for just a moment and go back to those feature classes. So now that you can see what's in there, you can, as you see, create a new data set. You can call it whatever you want. You can add in new points. If you want to add in a point class, it allows you to select what type of icon you want to use for that. So you can use whatever you want. You can choose the color that you want that to be and click Save. And then these are those different attributes I was talking about. You can add, it defaults always with description and time. And you can click Attribute and say, well, with this I also want a photo added into that. So save that, and I also want, let's say, a list of values added with that. And now I can, with that list of values, add the choices that I want to have down here with that. So I can say, is this a grass field? Add another choice. Is this a cornfield? Etc. And when I save that, and when I use that later, it's going to give me a drop-down menu to choose one of those things. So just a brief description on how you can add points. Lines and polygons are the same when you add those in. And now you can see that that test feature class is there, such that the next time I go to add a point, I can click back to sets to see what's there, and now you've got that test set. And I can choose from all the things. We just created one point in there, so that's what's there. But if I want to add that point, again, I can GPS locate where I am and place that. And you can see it's got all those things that we evaluated, as well as that list of values that I can either select from grass or corn based on what we just created. So very, very easy to create these feature classes and to add points onto your wherever you're at. The nice utility of this is that if I'm out in the field, I can really zoom in really far, and you have very good resolution for the most part on what you're looking at and how you're going to look at that. And adding in things like a polygon, for instance, you've got a couple different ways to do that. If we go into dairy inventory and we look at, let's say I want to mark out a field area, I can either do that by hand by moving the screen and clicking add point, etc. until I've got the area that I want. And I can click done with that. If I wanted to, for instance, add in a field area and I'm out in the field, at the bottom here you can see record with GPS. If I click on that, then as I walk, it's going to start recording that until I say stop recording, and then it'll add in that polygon based on what I've just walked. So it's a way to get really specific areas that you're looking at, etc. So I'm going to cancel out of that one. And so that's kind of the skinny on feature classes. What you can see here, you see these gray and blue kind of toggles on the side. If I click on wetlands, for instance, that'll turn blue, and that basically turns on that feature class, such that when I go back up and I'm looking at inventories and sets, you can now see that that wetlands one is available. If I go back and I turn that wetlands off and I turn, let's say, the field assessment off, you can see back in sets that those two are gone now. So that's a way to be able to not have all of those available. You can also delete these. So if on the travel one, if that's not something I use, I can delete it. Once it's deleted, it never comes back. So you have to be aware of that. The nice part about these as well is to delete those. By the way, it's just sliding it to the right. Like all applications you'll find in the iPad, it's always slide to the right for a delete. What you can also do with these for, let's say, the dairy inventory, for instance, is I can export this entire feature class to someone else. I can save it in Dropbox, and then if someone else on an iPad has the same app, this GISPro, they can open it and have that feature class. So it's a way to share these amongst each other so that we have consistency in our planning and what we're loading on some of these. So you can see if I click on the export button, it gives me those two options, locked or unlocked. If you want to send it locked such that it cannot be edited, that you are the owner and others are users, that's fine. If you send it as an unlocked, then that means both parties can use it. And then it gives you options of how to send it. And if you do open in, and it gives you the Dropbox option, and that's the best way to transport and export large files for sharing. And I recommend that you look at our Dropbox video that we've created in order to understand that and get a little bit more utility on how to use that. You can also send it via email to someone as well, as long as the size isn't too big. So let's go all the way back to this now. I'm going to click on layers again. Now we have layers there. So these are the layers that we just created over here in the screen. And if I click on point of interest, it's going to show that point. And if I click on it, it's going to show on our map what that is and what I recorded. Conversely, if I'm on the map here, I can click at a point at any time. And again, it's going to pop up over here what exactly went along with that point that I made. So on these, again, you've got the ability to turn them on and off. So this point of interest here, I can turn off, and you can see that's disappeared from my screen, so I don't have to see everything at once. To share these points with others, you can either share this entire file, and you can click down here on the export again, and it gives you a lot of different options on how to export these. And I'm going to come back to this in just a moment, but you can note that what's important here is when you do export, if they're in blue, that means those points will export. If you turn them off for any reason, that means they will not be exported. So you need to make sure that you've got the ones on and off that you want based on how you're sending out the file and what information that you want to go out. So back to this export function. So we've got a variety of different ones here. The KMZ Compact is basically, KMZ Compact is basically a file that can be sent out and opened in something such as Google Earth. It can be opened by anybody, which is quite nice, and Google Earth is a free program, so that's able to send to producers, to store on your hard drive at work, such that other planners or folks can open that at any time on their desktop and be able to see what you've done. The KMZ Compact with small photos, that's basically just going to shrink the file size so it's easier to send to folks, but all of your notes that you've made with each of those points as well as photos will go with it. The regular KMZ sends the same thing but in a much larger file size for larger resolution, and both of these can be opened in something like Google Earth, or you can save this in Dropbox, and someone else with a GIS app on their iPad can open up that file in your shared Dropbox folder and be able to open up this entire project. So that's a great way to share amongst. GPX is basically just GPS coordinates will go with this project, and you can open those on your Garmin or other GPS device. A CSV is a comma separated text, so if you're logging information with this app just based on numerical values, so you're out there taking field notes on forage height or locations, you can export this as essentially a comma separated text is an Excel file, so all your numbers and notes, text or numbers, will come across that way. A shape file is essentially the file that you would export to open in ArcMap. You're going to have to do, when you do shapefile, it's going to ask you to do one feature class at a time. So it doesn't export the whole thing due to size, but you can pick one of these at a time. So you can maybe just do your polygons if you want that in your ArcMap, or you can do one at a time and do them that way. Shapefile with images does the same, but put your images with it. And then layer hierarchy essentially just sends layer information. So it exports your information as a Word document, so just the text part of it. No pictures, no GPS, etc. So if that's a utility in that text file, that's how to export that. So going back to our main menu here, when we look at settings, this is where you can choose what your base map types are. So it gives you a lot that are preloaded here. You can add your own map type as well as you can restore defaults if you at some reason did a little too much. If we do offline maps, so this is really important for those that do not have a data plan, or you're going to go somewhere where you have no cell coverage and you won't be able to have your maps automatically up. So this is a way to cache your maps if you're on Wi-Fi for instance. When you do have Wi-Fi available to you, you can add a new cache region. And I'm going to zoom out a little bit to make this a little obvious to see. And you pick what type of map type you want to do. And I'm going to choose Google Hybrid. And now it gives me 3 different options on the type of cached region shape I want to make: a rectangle, a circle, or a free dry area. And I'm going to choose rectangle. And you can see that it basically puts a rectangle on my screen, and now I zoom in with my fingers in or out for the region that I want to cache. And basically caching means that it will take a photo, a usable, workable photo, if you will, of that, and then when I don't have service I can still access that, but everything around it won't be able to load up. So you can choose basic, high, or very high of your resolution that you want. I'll choose high in this case. And then down here in the corner you click the blue cache. And now you can see I've got that available. I can add another region if I know where I'm going to be going, and let's say it's farther away from where I am. On my map, I just go to wherever that area may be. This time I've chosen a circular region just for example purposes. Again, I choose basic, high, or very high, and then I click cache. And now I've got that region as well. If I was out in the fields, what I would do is I'd click my offline maps and it would show me all the cached regions. And if I click on that rectangular, it's going to zoom right back to where that is and what area I've got cached on there. So that's how you use those out in the field, and then you would just go about placing your points and other things just as we done before with the feature classes. So the next one is project units. This is just, you'll probably set this once and not really work with it very much. So if you're meters versus feet, if you like acres versus hectares, this is where you can set that basic project unit right off the bat. GPS settings is the same. You can choose what distance filters and accuracy that you want for your device. This ultra accuracy button, if you read here, what it tells you is you can turn this on and it does increase the accuracy of the GPS functioning of this unit. And typically what we found is that you're approximately within about 20 feet. If you, oftentimes it's within 5 or so, which is really good when you've got either a data plan service or you're within Wi-Fi. But if you turn this on, it will drain your battery a little bit faster, but when you want ultra accuracy GPS, you can utilize that right then. There are also additives that you can put into your iPad for GPS boosters, for instance, that increase the accuracy of the GPS function of your iPad in general. So with that, it's kind of gone over the basics of this. One other thing that we'll also show you, there is an import function. So if you are connected to iTunes, you can import large files or backgrounds. You can scan documents and bring them in that way and utilize them there. You can also do that through Dropbox. If you've got an image or something in Dropbox and when you open it there, it gives you the option to open it in GISPro, and it will turn that into one of your backgrounds. One thing that we do want to show you is that you can also have the option of importing in large layers or large feature classes, and we've got another video that shows you just how to do this with utilizing ArcMaps. So if you've got, for instance, this is our This is our layer for farm plan fields. I also have our soils layer, wetlands layer, and rivers and streams here. And this is more informational when you're out in the field. It does kind of take a while for this to load, and you can mark points on here, but we kind of use this as a separate file for information. And how this works is I can zoom into a farm field, and I can click on that field, for instance, and it pops up all the information that we had stored on that in our database. If I turn on the soils layer here, you can see that layer pop up. Again, I can click on that and it will give me the information on that soil type. This is really helpful when you're out talking with a farmer or you're out doing a field inventory, visual inventory, and you can kind of see what type of soil is that, why am I seeing ponding, etc. So that's a nice way to use that. And we've got this set up as its own kind of project as layers. So you can access previous projects, as I mentioned. Let's say we were zoomed into this. Where this fit comes into handy is that if I click fit, it shows me all of the points that I've got. So these as well as the ones here, so I can see, oh yeah, I've got more on this project, and I can move over and zoom on to those other points if I want to, and be able to click on them and see what I've got associated with that point. Once you make a point as well, you can edit it. So if I click on a point, and down here you can see edit point, I can click that and I can either delete it or I can move it. So I can click over here and say place point. If I was out in the field and I place it and I get back to the office and I say, oh, that one's a little bit off, or I want to change maybe a polygon, the corner of a polygon, I can do that as well. So I can show that one based on the example that we just did when we made our polygon, is that I can click on that layer, and if I do edit points, you can see that it allows me to do that. And I can click on any one of those areas and I just move the cursor and I can click place point and it resets that line. So it gives you the ability to do this in the field, but then when you're back in the office, if you want to do a little bit of correction, you can do that before you export this in a format that you want to utilize. So I didn't save that one, which is why it snapped back out. So it's a very usable app. It has a tremendous amount of utility, but also a lot of simplicity on how it works and functions. And building your own data sets and sharing those within your colleagues who do similar things, or just within what you do in the office in particular, as well as exporting those entire feature classes and or your layers as basically file storage. Now that we're all kind of going to a more tech way of doing all that, you can put these in your producer files as your PNI notes and all those description pieces, as well as having all your photos. One other important thing is all the photos that you take within this app. If you go back to your photos on your iPad, they are all stored on there. So that weird photo I took is in here. So you don't have to export and move those around. They're always double stored, so you know that happens. So with that, we'll connect out of here, and if you have any questions, you can look on the GISPro website and or give us a call and we can give you more information. Thank you.